Good morning. Morning. If everyone could please take their seats and we can get the meeting started. Thank you all for coming this morning. Before the meeting begins, I do want to go over some brief points of housekeeping. First and foremost, we are respecting the school policy of masks, so thank you for your compliance wearing a mask. In the event of emergency, please proceed in orderly fashion either side of the gym. We have two exits here, two exits where you came in. Please make sure you have your voter cards. The yellow card. So if anyone doesn't have the voter card and does need to go get it, please get that now. In terms of microphone etiquette, our facilities director, Josh Coughlin, and crew will be going around with a microphone. This is different than in years past. We will not have a microphone at the in front of us folks. We will be bringing the microphone to you, and that's just to keep movement down to a minimum. If you have an amendment to any motion or to any warrant article, please write it out. We do have some forms, and you're welcome to write it out on anything you may bring. Also, I do want to announce that there is a replacement tax impact sheet. It was brought to my attention that the tax impact sheet that was out in the lobby did not contain the most up-to-date information. So copies were made. Please make sure you get a new tax impact sheet for when Mark LePage, Chair of the Budget Committee, is ready to go over that. There is no confusion. I'd like to recognize the folks to my right and to my left. To my right, Cynthia Menard, School District Clerk. Mark LePage, Budget Committee Chair. Jerry Fleury, Budget Committee Vice Chair. Those Budget Committee members not sitting up front, but I do want to recognize, include Armin Susi, Peter Gaji, Paul Hansen, Clint Hansen Jr., Dave Doherty, Sandy Goulet, Board of Selectmen Alternative, Karen Yetten, Board of Selectmen Representative, Andy Camage, School Board Rep, Jean Gauss, School Board Alternative, Jillian McNeil, Recording Secretary. To my left, Andy Camage, Chair of the School Board and Budget Committee Rep, Jean Gauss, School Board, Amber Wheeler, SAU 53 Business Administrator, Patty Sherman, Superintendent over Town of Pembroke. Those school board members not sitting up front include Ann Bond, Amy Manzelli, and April Villani. Now, if everyone could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, justice for all. Amen. To the inhabitants of the school district and the town of Pembroke qualified to vote in district affairs, the governing body initially set the date for the Pembroke School District's annual meeting for Saturday, March 6, 2021 at 10 a.m. at Pembroke Academy. Pursuant to emergency order number 83, the school board, in consultation with the district moderator and clerk, has determined that concerns exist for conducting the district's annual meeting in March 2021 due to the COVID-19 health emergency. Therefore, the board has determined that the Pembroke School District's annual meeting shall be postponed until May 21st, 2021 at 10 a.m. at Pembroke Academy. You are hereby notified to meet at Pembroke Academy in said district on the first day of May, 2021 at 10 a.m. in the gymnasium and to act upon the following subjects.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the reading of the full warrant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mark and Jerry. So the motion is dispensed with the formal reading of the warrant. Any questions about the motion? All in favor, please hold up your voter card. All opposed? Motion carries. Therefore, I will go to the first warrant to hear the reports of agents, auditors, committees, or officers chosen and to pass any vote relating thereto. The request was that I slow down, and I'm happy to try to oblige. 30 years of Tom Petty, I'm pretty sure you got pretty good at this. I'm going to give it my best shot. So again, to hear the reports of agents, auditors, committees, or officers chosen, and to pass any vote relating thereto. Is there anything to come before the meeting? Then we'll move to warrant 2, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee's recommended amount of $27,474,679 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries, for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment for the statutory obligations of the district. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. School Board recommends approval of $27,474,679. Budget Committee recommends approval of $27,474,679. And as is tradition at this point, I do want to turn it over to the Chair of the Budget Committee, Mark LePage.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sensitive to the sound in here, so I'll try to speak slowly. I know the acoustics are not the best. As we get started, I'd first like to thank the school board, members of the school board, the local administrators here at the schools, and our SA administrators for all their efforts in preparing the budgets and providing information to us and working with us throughout this budgetary season. It's a lot of work. It's sometimes pretty challenging. And COVID hasn't made it any easier, but I want to thank them very much. I also want to thank all the members of the Budget Committee as well. This is it's a completely volunteer group. We spend a lot of time working on these budgets and interacting with things. And again, it was a challenge this year with everybody on Zoom. All our meetings were held that way, but it all came off pretty well. So I want to thank everybody. Like we saw with town meeting this year, there's a slight change in the order of the articles that are presented. We'll be dealing with the main budget first, and then some, I'll call it, secondary level warrant articles following. As you've probably heard me state in the past, the Budget Committee looks at the town and school budgets both individually and in combination to see what the overall impact is to taxpayers. And we poke and prod at these budgets and the proposals. And at the end, we come up with a recommendation that's independent of the town and the school. The budgets that we work with are estimates. The revenues that we work with are best estimates, and the tax rates that we'll discuss are best estimates, because that's really all we have. There's no guarantees, there's no crystal balls that help us see what goes on. So everything we work with is estimates, but we try to do our best to work with the most accurate estimates. All right. Is this better? Okay. The budget committee can act only on appropriations, and we can only act at the gross appropriation level. So we can't formally go down to detailed line items and say, well, we think that 39 cents should be 38 cents. We can do that informally, but not at a formal level. And finally, just as also an appropriate note, the school board, as do the selectmen, have the final discretion in terms of funding within budgetary line items. So some key items that were impacting the budget this year, both common to the town and the school. Significant increases, once again, placed on us by the state of New Hampshire in retirement contributions for employees, health insurance, and contracted salaries. Specific to the school side that had a big impact, there's a decrease of $882,000 from state adequacy grant aids. During our discussions with the school board, based on some input from the budget committee and other considerations, the school board in January reduced their budget proposal by $334,000. They also eliminated a number of proposed warrant articles that totaled $312,000. So that resulted in the budget information that you see in front of you today. The budget committee did not fully agree with the school board on all their warrant articles, and I will talk to that shortly. At this point in time, I'm going to introduce the chairman of the school board, Andy Camage, to talk a little further about the school board's perspective on their budget. Then I will return and follow up with some more of the budget committee's perspective, and then we'll go through the detailed numbers with the tax sheet. But I do want to make sure that the tax sheet that everybody has that they're working with, at the top in the yellow box, it's dated March 8th. That's the version we're using. There was a version incorrectly floating around from January. We're using the March 8th version. Okay. So Andy?
Thanks, Mark. I want to first echo Mark's thanks to all the municipal budget committee members, to the school board for working on this. Like he said, it's no small task. I also want to give a shout out to Jason Mayu over there for noticing that the wrong tax sheet was printed up today so that we could get them printed and out to you before the meeting started. We want always to give you the best information that we can. I don't have as much to say this year as I did last year, but I do want to reiterate a couple of points from last year so that I can stay consistent. One of the things that I want to start with is kind of what I call the big scary number. And if you look on your tax impact sheet, the bottom right-hand box is the total change in the town tax rate. If you remember last year at this meeting, we were talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of a 12.4% increase to the tax rate. I explained to you last year that that wasn't going to happen. There are other things that factor into this, one of the biggest being a surplus from the school that's returned to offset that tax rate. If you look in that bottom right-hand box, under the red line that says 2020, you can see that that 12.4% that we talked about last year actually ended up being 4.3%. That's more of a decrease, frankly, than normal, but it is typical for that number to go down. So that being the case, if we look at this year, it's saying an 8.2% increase with the school board's numbers and an 8.0% increase with the municipal budget committee numbers. Currently, the school has a surplus of around $825,000. A couple of weeks ago, that number was over $1 million. The school board took some action, and we decided to use some of that extra money to pay for some urgent matters, one of which being a part of the roof that is currently leaking, that we have to put buckets underneath, some flooring replacements and things like that. So we decided to take some of that extra money and spend it on some projects. So like I said, there's still a little over $825,000 in the surplus currently. It's not guaranteed that that money is going to be 100% returned to the taxpayers. I want to stress that. Things could change between now and the close of the books on June 30th. The school board could spend more of that money on projects that we find urgent. But for purposes of discussion today, I'm going to many times assume that we're going to return $700,000 of that 825. I want to again stress that is not a concrete number, but I think it's a good estimate to go with. So going back to the talk of the big scary number in the bottom right, if you apply a $700,000 surplus, that number is going to go down to the ballpark of 4.5% again. So that is, in my opinion, a much more a reasonable expectation of what you'll actually see for a tax rate increase. I want to thank Mark for pointing out that all of these are estimates. This is not a perfect system by any means. The town budget and the school budget don't line up calendar-wise. We have to do things kind of the way the state tells us how to do things. So this sheet is a good tool, but it is never going to be perfect. So shifting gears to the top left box on your tax sheet, this is appropriations. So what appropriations mean, and specifically in this box, what appropriations mean, is the money that is set aside to pay for school items, the money that we are requesting or that we received in past years to pay for the things that you all have voted on and approved. So it's important to note this box includes warrant articles. That can be confusing because there's a box at the top that says operating budget, and that does not include warrant articles. So what I mean by that is we're going to vote in a few minutes on a warrant for a contract for our paraprofessionals that totals about $100,000. This appropriations number in the top left box assumes that we're going to pass that. Okay, so this number is all inclusive of all the money that we're going to ask you for this year. So if you look at the school board's 2021 number of 1.4%, it's a moderate increase of not quite $400,000 over what we asked for last year. If we go back in time a little bit, if we go to the beginning of 2015, as far back as this sheet goes, we asked for $25.5 million. Last year, I talked to you about normalizing this number. It can be hard to perceive what we're asking for when you see changes that are +8, +2.5, -5, +6. So what I like to do is start with that 2015 number, or whatever the earliest number is on this sheet, and find a multiplier where if I apply that percentage increase every single year equally, we equal out to what we're asking you for this year, okay? This year, that number is 1.3%. So if you go back to 2015 and we increased the money that we are asking you for by 1.3% every single year, we'd be roughly, actually just a little bit more than the money that we're asking you for this year. To me, that's just an easier way to look at it and see what we're doing long term. And with the budget committee's number, it's pretty close. Our numbers are very close this year, and that, we worked pretty hard on making that happen. So that's the appropriation side. Let's see. Oh, so it's also important to say that there are increases in the school budget that we don't really have control over, right? This year, there's going to be an increase in special ed funding of $342,682. An increase in benefits, going back to retirements like Mark talked about, of $128,507. That is a downshift from the state to the county again. The transportation lines, that's a contract that we signed years ago that we can't get out of, that's going to increase by $58,000. Last year at this meeting, we approved a new 3-year teacher contract. I believe the number for that this year is around $420,000. And again, if we assume that we're going to pass the paraprofessionals contract for a moment, that's another $100,000 that we have to spend. When you add up all these obligations, it comes out to about $900,000 that we have to spend above and beyond what we spent last year. But again, if you look at the appropriations number in the top left box, we're only asking you for about $420,000 or $440,000 more, which means the school district has already made reductions of around $500,000 to offset some of these increases that we didn't have a say in. Mark alluded to it a little bit before also. After our first presentation with the Municipal Budget Committee this year, it was clear that there was a feeling that we needed to make some progress on lowering that number. That was on a Thursday. We had a school board meeting the subsequent Tuesday, and by that time, Mrs. Sherman had already met with the administration, and they presented us with a list of cuts of $120,000-ish that we immediately approved. So we have definitely been working to bring this budget in as low as we can, because we understand the climate with COVID and everything like that, and some people have lost their job or reduced their hours. Let's see. I think that's about it. I think that the Budget Committee and the school board worked well together this year. There were a couple of contentious moments, but we worked through them. And at the end of the day, as Mark said, we've got a small disagreement on another warrant article later on. But on this number, the two committees agreed. And I just love to see that happen. I love to see that the Municipal Budget Committee and the school board can come together on a number that they find reasonable to fund our schools and give us what we need. So I think that's it. Thank you.
So when we talk about the numbers, and Andy actually got into the numbers a little more than I had expected he was going to on the tax sheet, there's really two documents that we work with. One is the tax sheet, and we'll come to that in a moment. The other set of documented financial information is in your annual report. It's in the back, and it immediately follows the warrant. And that's the formal MS-27 form. That's what it's titled. That's the form that's provided to the state of New Hampshire based on the budget, from which taxes are actually finally calculated and all the details happen. This is the formal, I guess it should be considered the formal budget. When I talked earlier about what the budget committee can vote on or approve or recommend or not recommend against, this is actually that formal part versus the informal stuff, which is sort of the smaller little details. When you look at the MS-27 form, and there's 10 pages in total, but if you look at, say, page 2 or page 3, the columns that are most worthy to pay attention to are titled the school board's appropriations, period ending 6/30/22, budget committee's appropriations, recommended, ending 6/30/22, and budget committee not recommended, ending 6/30/22. So one important factor there is that 6/30/22 date, that June 30th date. That's the end of the school's budgetary year. So that's why when we talk about surplus amounts and being returned for tax relief and things, that's why we don't have any finalized numbers, because they don't close their books until as of June 30th. The same thing happens with the town, although the town's date is earlier in the year. So if you were to look through those various pages, you'll see that the budget committee's appropriations not recommended, the final right-hand column, is pretty much the same on just about everything. It's all zeros rather, meaning that we were in agreement on all the items of the main budget. Now, when the committee took its vote, it was a split vote. It was a 6-4 vote in support of this budget, which is, a pretty good split for the budget committee. There's been years where we've been much more in alignment, but that's what it is. The majority of the committee as a whole voted on that. There are two articles that we'll discuss a little bit later, but I just figured it'd be easier to talk to them now, where the budget committee does not agree. And those are on regarding a vehicle trust. And you'll see those, budget committee does not agree, reflected on page 5 of the MS-27 form, page 5 of 10, down at the bottom, 20,000 and 32,500. The primary reason the Budget Committee did not agree to support those articles is because of the way the trust fund is being described to be created, with the school board as authorized to expend versus the taxpayers being authorized to expend. That's the primary reason that's not being supported. That is the only difference you'll find between recommended Budget Committee, recommended school board. So with that, bringing it back to the tax sheet, as Andy described a little bit on some of this. So we've been using this form for a lot of years. It was actually developed before I became chair, and we've modified it a little bit. But if you've been in town for a while, you certainly recognize it. Total assessed value in the upper left. New Hampshire state adequate education grants in the upper right. And you can see that there's a 14% decrease for the schools this year. That's that $800,000 that I mentioned a little while ago. Coming down, we have appropriations, as Andy discussed, revenues, which also reflect that loss of $880,000 odd dollars. On the sheet in green, with the pound sign preceding it, that is the school board or the town's proposal. The little right-hand facing caret is the Budget Committee. So you can see appropriations, we agree. I mean, we don't have any say really on that. Revenues, excuse me, we do have a difference there. Sorry, that's those warrant articles. Revenues is the same. Net amount to be raised, therefore, is $55,000 lower because of those warrant articles. And then down at the bottom, you have the dollar rate per thousand. The 1665 versus 1658 reflects the difference, that 55,000 difference in those two warrant articles. Now, and then you carry it over, you add up the state school, municipal, which we approved back in March, county numbers, which are just handed to us. We don't have any say in that. And that brings us over to the far lower right at 2655, or an 8% increase. Now, as Andy indicated, the school board is running a significant surplus, and they anticipate returning a significant amount of money to the town for tax relief. We can't be 100% sure what that number is, and therefore we couldn't have voted on it back in February when we had to take votes by state statute on all this stuff. All this stuff had to be prepared in February. That's state law. We didn't, while we had a waiver on holding this meeting till later, we didn't have a waiver on preparing the budgets and things from the state. So at that time, this was sort of our best estimate. We did have a sense that there was going to be a good surplus return to us, but again, we didn't know. We still don't know exactly what that surplus amount is going to be. We won't know until after June 30th when the books are closed. So the Budget Committee operated under the standard procedure that we have, assuming no surplus, assuming no return for tax relief, and therefore that's the numbers that you see estimated on the tax sheet. However, as Andy said, there is all along it's been looking like there's going to surplus, and we've got a better sense now of where it's going to be. So should there be a $700,000 surplus to be returned to the town for tax relief, okay, that would reduce the local school amount on the Budget Committee's recommendation of 1658. It would reduce it to 1567. The total percent school change from the Budget Committee's proposal would come down to 5.3% from 10.8%. And the total tax rate in the bottom right, rather than 8%, would be 4.3% increase, with the number being 2564. So instead of 2655, 2564. There's a pretty good chance that this surplus will come to fruition. But we can't be sure until the books are closed. So that's the best we can do. There being a fair degree of confidence, I'm comfortable talking to it, and that's why I gave you these numbers. If I wasn't at all confident, I wouldn't have talked about it. So with that, I would like to make the motion to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee's recommended amount of $27,474,679 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment for the statutory obligations of the district. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. School Board recommends approval, and Budget Committee recommends approval.
So again, going back to the second warrant article, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee's recommended amount of $27,474,679 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment for the statutory obligations of the district. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. School Board recommends approval of $27,474,679. Budget Committee recommends approval of $27,474,679. Pleasure of the meeting. Motion to approve, Tammy Boucher. Tammy Boucher. Is there a second? Second. Questions? And again, there's not a microphone at the front. Raise your hand. Josh Coughlin will bring the microphone to you. Before we get started with questions, if you can just remember to please state your name and your street address, please.
I'll try to speak clearly.
And again, Rosemary, I know we're doing our best to honor the mask, but just so everyone can hear, if when people ask questions, if they can just pull their masks down just enough so we can better understand what you're asking. Thank you.
I was wondering, Budget Committee recommended, it was 6-4. I would like to know, I don't need to know names before, but what would, for the people that voted against it, what were their concerns?
The primary concerns were just the overall dollar amount. There was, a feeling that there should have been some, among some members, that there should have been some further reductions, perhaps based on student enrollment. There could have felt, so that was the general gist of it.
You hear me? Thank you. This is Sarah Smith of Pembroke Street in Pembroke. And I think I'm asking a question maybe on other people's minds. When there is a big reduction like this, which seems to be fairly unusual to me, I wonder if you can give us an idea of why there was this extra surplus, is what we're talking about. And it's not and whether or not it's the kind of thing that would actually be repeated.
Sure, thank you. I should have mentioned that before. So there's kind of a history of a decently large surplus, and it's something that actually the Budget Committee recommended that we look at and try to reduce that so that there isn't such a fluctuation. But the biggest factor in this case is COVID. I believe it was August, if not September, basically when the school year started, our superintendent froze the budget. No unnecessary spending. I mean, we weren't buying supplies. We didn't know what the school year was going to look like, and the budget remained frozen until this month. So anything that normally would have been spent that was not a 100% necessary had to go through the superintendent's office, and those purchases up until that roughly 180,000 that I mentioned that we just authorized for the roof and things like that. Up until that point, there was no expenditures that we didn't absolutely need, and that's the main driver of the surplus this year.
Can I ask a second question? In terms of the warrant article, I'm just curious, when you set aside money for something like a trust fund, I agree that the town should be able to vote on it. And it seems to me that it's making a special thing out of these vehicles, and I don't know why vehicles require a special fund.
Well, I appreciate the question. That is a different warrant, and I'd encourage you to ask the question again when we get there. We are acting on warrant number 2.
Kathy Cruson, Pembroke Hill Road. I may not be reading this right. I'm looking at the blue sheets under DRA revenues, and it looks to me, I'm looking at line 3359. So it looks to me as though the state sources of revenue, what Pembroke received from the state, was decreased by $479,000 this year. Is that approximately adequate? Were you folks trying to make up for $480,000 less received from the state?
Yeah, that number is roughly accurate. And it's a couple of things. So as we mentioned, the state did provide additional adequacy aid specifically for the 19 and 20 school years. So fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20. So that went away this time, and that was over $800,000. So we knew that we weren't going to get that. And then, so where the $400,000 number comes in is there are a few things that increased little by little that added up to make up some of that difference. So, I've got it written here. Give me just a second here. State education tax revenue came up just a little bit. Building aid came up just a little bit. Catastrophic aid came up just a little bit. So there were some other funding revenue mechanisms that increased. So we lost that big chunk of 800,000. We made up about 400,000 in some other areas. But so we were, I think getting to your point, starting from a place of basically $400,000 in the hole.
Hi, Mark Dumont on Donnelly Drive, Pembroke. I have 2 questions. Should we be expecting a surplus like this every year? If so, what, like broad-based, what amount should we be expecting? And if we vote no to both of these budget plans, what happens?
So I would absolutely not expect a surplus of this size every year. But as everybody has said, the surplus is unpredictable. There was the revenue shortfall back in 2017. That made things go one way. The following year, the school board gave back $1 million to make up for it. So that was the same surplus that we're talking about here. The number kind of fluctuates up and down. What I would like to see, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, but just on myself, is that we can get to a more comfortable number and dial in our budget a little bit so that there's maybe a $200,000 surplus or something like that. You can't dial in a budget of $25 million to a specific amount, because if we are short even by $1, we have to come back to all of you, hold a special meeting, get approval to spend that extra dollar. So we do have to figure high somewhat, but a surplus of this magnitude, again, outside of the budget freeze and things like that, should not be expected. I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't hear your second question.
Yeah, if we voted down both budgets, they're both the same this year, what would happen? Would we revert to next year's budget? And the other thing, so So we may not have surpluses every year, so we could see a dramatic increase just because of no surplus next year in the tax rate, right?
So Amber, can you explain how so he's asking if these buckets go up last year, based on. I don't remember the exact formula, but I believe what it is it's based off of last year's number, and then there's some increase off of that based on an RSA, I believe. So there is a formula laid out by the state for what happens if these don't pass. We also could ask for another meeting to bring you another number. But that's, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact details on what would happen.
Yeah, yeah, we do have to leave with a budget today. Fortunately, we do have legal counsel present, but it would be my expectation that if the budget got voted down, that someone would make a motion, an amendment to the budget, and then we'd vote on a different dollar amount. But the expectation is that we do have to leave here today with an approved budget, whatever that dollar amount is. And there is a limitation how far you can go down in terms of if it didn't pass. It is not statutorily acceptable to make a motion and bring the budget down to zero, for argument's sake. Other questions?
So if we don't have a surplus next year, there'll be an automatic increase to the tax rate. Am I right or am I wrong?
Sorry, I didn't quite.
So next year, same time, come around next year, if we have no surplus, that'll be basically an automatic increase to the tax rate. Am I correct?
No, I mean, it would depend on every other budget line that we have. So, and also you need to remember the surplus affects the following year's budget. So if there were no surplus next year, that doesn't really bear, all that would really mean is that the tax impact sheet would be very, very accurate.
What I'm asking is, say we had the exact same budget next year, but no surpluses for the following year, it would basically be an increase to the tax rate. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, if it was the same exact budget. But again, the budget committee every year has the ability to determine every single line in the budget, what they want that to be. So
this year's budget, we can't depend on a surplus every year. So the surplus this year is only going to help us out with this year's budget this year. So it's basically a padding for 1 year.
are there any other questions?
My name's James Gammon. I live on Pleasant Street. My question is more along the lines of the discovery process for how you come up with a budget. One of the things that I find lacking with some of the information is there's no line item information in what we're spending our money on. We got $20+ million going out, but no real idea of where it's gone, where it's been, or how it's being spent. Every year you have, it seems there's been an overage. If you're doing a research to figure out where that overage is occurring and tightening up the budget, shouldn't we tighten it up before we just arbitrarily approve it? Because right now, as a business, I couldn't approve this if I was working in my business. Not having a clear and concise number, even from a point of knowing that there's a possibility of an overage or an underage, et cetera. You as a business need to know going in what you're trying to do. Just throwing money at stuff, not the answer. What are your plans to research this, figure out where these overages are occurring and why, and then start running things like a business and not like, constantly having these overages? It really doesn't, from a business point of view, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, so as I said before, the main driver for this overage is that we froze the budget almost a year ago. In this entire school year, we specifically spent less money on anything that was not 100% necessary in an effort to have this surplus. We basically set out to make a surplus this year to help the citizens with the tax rate next year because of the COVID situation. And we knew that we had people in this town either out of work or with childcare concerns that were taking up a lot of money or whatever, financial concerns. So we made a decision way back in August to try to maximize our surplus this year in an effort to help out with the tax rate. So, I mean, to look back to your point, it is certainly a worthwhile activity to look at the budget every year and see where we can tighten our belts and bring the numbers closer to what they should be. But in this particular case, that overage is primarily due to an effort to lower the tax rate next year.
If we can just, our school district clerk was unable to get your name and street address. I can just repeat it for the record, please.
James Gammon, Pleasant Street.
All set, thank you.
But you didn't address my question. What plans are you making to correct this issue? I mean, we don't even know what the cost per capita per child for schooling each year. I mean, are we charging 50,000 per student, 5,000, what? You know, if we're actually have a reduction in the head count of students, we should be seeing a reduction in budget, not an increase.
Yep. So all of that is known. And I would encourage you to get involved with the municipal budget committee process. So we put our budget together throughout about October, November, and usually in the middle of December is when the first time that we present the full budget to the municipal budget committee. The MS-27 forms or 727 forms that you see in the packet today, that's 10 pages, that is a summary that the state helps us provide so that you guys can get a snapshot of what's going on. The budget is this. I think it's around 85 pages. We make it publicly available after every school board meeting that Amber presents it to us. We make it publicly available after every municipal budget committee session when we have conversations with them. And in this full budget, not every line, but many lines where people have had questions in the past, there have been notes added so that you, the public, can see what's in there. If you remember a year or two ago, there was some concern about some 3D printers. And the reason that that concern was able to be voiced was because that note was in the budget packet. So that information is out there. It's not a super easy document to get through, but it is something that we present publicly multiple times between November and February before we come to a number with these folks.
Again, I'd also ask Mark LePage just to speak a little bit about some of the detail that the budget committee reviews as well.
Yeah, as Andy said, there's a extremely detailed budget packet that's prepared by the SAU administration and the school board. It's same as the town. And those contain all types of data for us in terms of specifics around students, enrollments, costs, every line item, every detailed line item. I think Jerry had said it's about 118 pages of details that we have available that we pour through and that we poke and prod at during the budget process. Again, same for the town side too. So we can make informal recommendations at those extremely detailed line item levels. But formally, we work with the document that you have in your town directory here. But I can assure you that the budget committee looks at things right down to very tiny amounts. And any of the budget committee members can attest to that as well.
Susan Seidner, 439 Deer Path Lane. I'd like to make a motion to move the question and vote on the budget.
Is there a second? All in favor, please hold up your voter cards. All opposed? The motion carries. Now, we did have some citizens take advantage of New Hampshire RSA 40:4-A secret ballot. It requires 5 voters who are present to make a request in writing prior to a vote by voice vote or division vote, that the vote be taken by secret written ballot. Upon receiving such a request, the moderator shall conduct the vote by a secret yes/no ballot. So if you can just give us a few minutes, we do need to set up the ballot box. You will still need your voter card because we'll punch it. We'll hand you a ballot. This does not just need to stay open a specific amount of time. So as soon as we can get through this, we can count this and we can move on with the rest of the meeting. So give us 1 minute, please. Again, if you can just do your best, social distancing, standing in line as we process through this would be appreciated. Thank you. The ballot box is now open. There's lines on my right and my left, folks passing out ballots.
told what a yes vote means and what a no vote. Like that's always the tweet.
And again, I was asked to articulate a yes vote means you're in support of the warrant. A no vote means that you're voting against the warrant.
Thank you so much. I might just put my ballot in the other box.
Is there any other person registered to vote that has not voted? I get, going twice. Is there anyone else who actually get a? In the booth.
I told the woman with the keys about the ballot that's in that other box, and she said she'd take care of it.
All right, one final request. Is there anyone present who hasn't voted who would like to vote? If not, I am going to declare voting closed and we're going to count the ballots.
Hello, neighbor. How are you? There you go. You could use the table. Yeah, please. How you doing, Cheyenne? You're all done school, right?
Not yet. I graduate May 16th.
May 16th.
Yep.
Are we involved?
This one was in it, they put it in the ballot box.
Stuck in Portland, Oregon, and their market's the same. They would say,
Yeah? You're calling. Here's one more.
Okay.
There's one more.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Please, have them.
the harder it is. Got a bunch of I can I know it's really Yes. Oh. I don't know. So I text you. Oh, well, I'm having enough on the phone. I didn't want to think about that. Congratulations. You know, I Congratulations.
All right, if everyone can please take their seats. We have finished counting the ballots. Total cast 97. Yes vote 69, no votes 20. The motion carries. So now we'll move on to warrant article number 3, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to approve the cost items set forth in the collective bargaining agreement. Okay, there's that's a motion to invoke. So you're making a motion to restrict reconsideration. Okay, is there a second? There's a second.
Gary Dean on?
Yeah. And who is the second? Kevin Foss on the second. So do folks understand what we're doing? Would anyone like this explained? All right, I can explain it vaguely, but we have counsel here today that I believe can explain it in much more detail than I can. So I'm going to put counsel to work.
So the statute, my name is Dean Eggert. I'm counsel for the Pembroke School District. The statute that is referred to as RSA 40:10, it's entitled Optional Restriction on Reconsideration, indicating that a district or town may vote to restrict reconsideration on any one or more votes that you've just taken. So upon approval of a motion to restrict reconsideration, any subsequent motion to reconsider would have to be dealt with in a subsequent meeting. And so that's what it means to restrict reconsideration. In other words, if it passes, then any subsequent motion to reconsider an article that's subject to that restriction would have to take place at an adjourned session of the meeting held 7 days after which after the date on which the motion to reconsider was approved. So let me just summarize quickly. If a motion to restrict reconsideration passes, then any motion brought forward after that to reconsider an article that is the subject of restriction can only be dealt with at a meeting held 7 days after the date on which the motion to reconsider is approved.
And again, just in point of further clarification, in practical terms, what has happened in meetings in the past, not necessarily in Pembroke, is folks stay around at the end of the meeting when there are just a few left, make a motion and change the will of the meeting. So this is keeping everyone that voted that may leave after this warrant article. This is making sure their intention is heard. And if it does need to get revisited, it will have to be revisited at a different date. So any questions? All those in favor, please hold up your voter card. All those opposed? Motion carries. So we will move on to warrant article number 3, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to approve the cost items set forth in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Pembroke School Board and the Pembroke Support Staff Association for the 2021-22, 2022-23, and 2023-24 fiscal years, which calls for the following estimated increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level. 2021-22, $99,675. 2022-23, $73,094. 2023-24, $66,736. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $99,675 for the 2021-22 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. School Board recommends approval. Budget Committee recommends approval. Pleasure of the meeting. Motion to approve, Andy. Is there a second? Second?
Hello again. A couple quick comments on this one. Paraprofessionals are an invaluable part of our district. They assist and support our teachers in making the whole education system work. We legitimately could not do what we do without them. Most of, if not all of the other districts within SAU 53 already have paraprofessional unions, and many districts throughout the state do. So this is certainly not out of the ordinary. And lastly, and I think most important to the people in this room, from my perspective, this just makes everything more transparent. So, when we vote on a new teacher's contract, that contract comes to this meeting. It's not part of the big budget number. You all get to vote on that number. And this allows us to do the same thing. Prior to this, the administration and the school board budgeted for what we thought we would need for paraprofessionals for the year. This makes it a separate document that you can all review and scrutinize, and we can all have a little bit more transparency in the process. So I would urge you to support this.
Questions?
And Green, Eastview Drive. Just in general terms, how many employees are covered by this, and what is the money for?
So there's just north of 50 paraprofessionals, and this would be for salaries, benefits, everything like that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the number in this contract represents raises, what would be additional next year. Obviously, the 99,000 is not the full amount that we pay these folks. It's what will be given to them in addition to what they got in the current year. So to answer your question more directly, about 52 people.
Mark Dumont, 36 Donna Drive. My question is, if we pass this, will this get in the way of any merit-based raises that we might want to give individual paras for their performance in the future?
So historically, merit-based increases for paraprofessionals has not been a thing. So this will standardize the way in which we give raises to paraprofessionals.
How did we give them raises in the past?
Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's just the school board, there's a rate for paraprofessionals, an hourly rate, and it gets reviewed periodically and set. Yep.
As a group or individually? Like how do you rate their performance, and the ones that are performing above and beyond, how do they get rewarded? How do we encourage this?
We've never employed merit pay in this district. The board typically votes on a pool of money to be put in the increase line, and then paras are reviewed. If they need to make improvements, they do, but we've never issued merit raise in this district.
Is there any way to reward individual performance when they go above and beyond? Like, are we going to be able to institute something like that along with this at some point in the future?
The board could certainly vote to do that, but we have not done that to this date.
Kathy Cruzen, Pembroke Hill Road. I used to work for Allenstown, and Pembroke was the lowest paying for paraprofessionals in the SAU. We paid more in Allenstown than Pembroke did. Are we still one of the lowest paying for paraprofessionals? Because it makes it hard to get employees.
Yes, currently, we are still one of the lowest. This contract will start to catch that up, and that's why you see a little bit, if you look at the 3 years of the contract, the increase in this coming year of 99,000 is the biggest, and that's to try to start closing that gap a little bit.
Sorry, hi, Jen Murphy, Terry Drive. I just wanted to mention, I hadn't heard anybody mention the fact that one of the main things that the paraprofessionals are doing are supporting the kids who have 504s, who have IEPs. They're a huge support system as far as one-on-one help for a lot of our kids that need and require that interaction, that one-on-one interaction. Besides that, as far as their role in the school, they are the wheels that keep it running. If we don't have our paraprofessionals to cover duties and make sure that all of our kids are settled and move kids from one place to the other, we can't run. So it is a very important, highly undervalued position. And I would love to see them get what they deserve for the hard work that they give.
If we can just get your name again for the record.
Yep, Jen Murphy, Terry Drive.
Thank you.
Sue Whitbeck, Pembroke Street, and very happily retired administrator from this district. But I would like to point out that some of these paras are written into our kids' IEPs. It is a legal issue. If we cannot hire people to fill those roles, we could very well find ourselves with our friend the lawyer in a very unpleasant way. So I think this definitely needs to be passed.
Rosemary Michaud, 340 Beacon Hill Road. I was wondering, right now, what is the starting hourly rate? And if this passes, what would the starting hourly rate be after?
I don't know off the top of my head, but Patty's going to see if she can, oh, did it already? Okay. Sure. In the binder in? So I don't have the current one right offhand, but the new, this initial step of the new contract, if this contract, if it were passed, would be $14.60 for the 2021-2022 school year. It would go up to $15.51 in the subsequent school year. And in 2023-2024, the first step would be $16.32.
I just want to bring it to everybody's attention that substitute teachers are paid more than our.
Oh,
parents.
if we can get your name and street, please.
Terry Dean, Melissa Drive.
Thank you.
Just want to bring it to your attention that our subs are paid more per day than our paras are. Thank you.
Got one more piece of information to answer over there. 1383, you said? We just found that number. It was 1383 is currently the lowest.
Any other questions at this time?
Ms. Sherman, did you just say?
Oh, can we get your name and street, please? I'm sorry, again?
Karen Rusing?
Yeah, you feel free to.
I'm not supposed to take my mask off.
Yeah.
Karen Rusing, Tina Drive. Pembroke.
Thank you.
Ms. Sherman, did you say $13?
1383.
You guys have to pass this. I cannot believe that I have an intellectually disabled child that's been in this district since the TLC program. With speech, tying her shoes, helping her to the bathroom, helping her change herself when she had her menses, snacks, extra activities in the summertime and on the weekends, and flow charts and touch math and all of these visual aids that they would do on their own for $13. Target is paying $15 an hour. You guys just, they deserve more than 16, but let's just at least get them that. Thank you.
Peter Mahagan, Pembroke Street. Formerly known as a French teacher here for 33 years and formerly retired and permanently a sub. Pembroke has not been known for its generosity with its paras. And I've been keenly aware of that through the decades that I've been here. I just want to say publicly, my own gratitude for the people that come back year after year after year. For you guys who are new to Pembroke area, even the maintenance staff has been working here for us for decades. You're looking at long-term people who like this town and like working for us, and yet we're not the most generous district when it comes to giving them what they deserve. This is an honor to be able to say something good to the paras and thank you and appreciate them. It gives them honor, it gives them dignity, it gives them the appreciation that we all feel because of the work that they do. The people that work in this district are unsurpassed. They're the best. So I'm voting yes.
Harry Seidner, Deer Path Lane. I move the question.
Is there a second? All in favor, please hold up your voter card. Motion carries. So similar to the last warrant, there was a petition to go to secret ballot. So if you all can give us just a couple minutes, the ballot box is already set up. You can probably just get in line in like 2 minutes and we can vote on this warrant article. Thank you. Blue team, ready? The ballot box is now open.
I was looking for it. I was looking. I was gonna let it go after the crying.
Good job.
Here. Here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job, man.
Chase of the safety system.
What awful timing happened.
Yeah.
Save it for when you're headed home.
I got it this time.
Thank you. Doing a great job.
Good.
She asked for it. Yeah, she asked so that it could get brought up again. Yeah, it won't get brought up again.
Welcome.
Did you say there's one more?
Thank you, sir. Come in. The one who's stuck with us, fine.
I'm not lifting either.
Hurt yourself?
Yeah, I got a whole stomach full of stitches.
Oh,
I don't feel like pulling. What's that? I'd have my gallbladder removed.
there's something growing on it.
What?
There was something growing on it.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
When did that, now when did you do that?
Thursday.
Oh, and here you are.
After that.
You okay?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Just not gonna lift anything.
You're kind of tough though. Yeah, so.
Is there anyone present that would still like to vote? Going twice, is there any voter that would like to vote on this warrant article? If there are no other voters would like to vote on this warrant article, I can declare the vote closed. So, is there paperwork for it?
I get it. There's
Nothing legally I can do again.
I get it.
No.
But once it starts, I guess.
Once it's, I mean, and they did it as official as can be done. They printed out the RSA, they signed it.
Here you go.
So just for clarification, this is so in a way. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So hopefully. Yeah.
I read it as a movie. And first of all, we did the bill. For me. I heard one. 8, 9 months.
So. I was state prosperity. These are something to just.
Yes. Now I know. Instead of like the platform, it's where a series of, and they found out real fast spots. I mean, we got almost 40 years on fire. And when the guy came in and realized that we found everything, and not really ready to go. But it turns out they wanted to bond it a lot. So people were installing it and so they designed it thinking it was a little bit longer to be science. But also the guy I had with the so I don't think we know right. Hopefully. Well, we could have so we put it off like all of last summer. Miles and I, in the middle of the night, we did one day, we did home, next day, we put amazing.
Everyone can please take their seats. The votes have been counted. Total cast, 92 ballots. Yeas, 82, noes, 10. The motion carries.
Hi, my name is Luann Archambault. I wanted to have a motion to restrict reconsiderations on Article 3.
Did you get the name?
Luanna Archambault.
First name again, I'm sorry.
Luanna Archambault.
Thank you. So similar, Kevin Foss on the second. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, please hold up your voter card. All opposed? Motion carries. Given the nature of warrant article number 4, to see if the Pembroke School District, if article number 3 is defeated, will authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address article number 3 cost items only. I consider that motion moot because article number 3 passed. And that was only going to be enacted if article number 3 was defeated. So we will move on to article number 5 to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the purpose of fire suppression upgrades and authorize the withdrawal of said funds from the School Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established for these purposes. School Board recommends approval. Budget Committee recommends approval. Pleasure of the meeting. Andy, is there a second? And Jean. Questions? I'm being extra careful because I was told I missed someone a few warrant articles ago. So if no questions, again, warrant Article 5, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the purpose of fire suppression upgrades and authorize the withdrawal of said funds from the School Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established for these purposes. School Board recommends approval. Budget Committee recommends approval. All in favor, please hold up your voter cards. Opposed? Motion carries. Article number 6, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to establish a vehicle expendable trust fund under the provision of RSA 198:20-c for the purpose of purchasing, replacing, or repairing school district vehicles, to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in this fund, and further to appoint the Pembroke School Board as agents to expend from this fund. Majority vote required. School Board recommends approval. Budget Committee does not recommend approval. Pleasure of the meeting. There's a second? Oh. Actually, if you want to recognize Peter.
Hello again. So as Mark and I both mentioned, I think this is the one place that there's some disagreement. I don't think the general setting up of a trust fund for vehicles, there's no disagreement upon that. I believe actually that either the Municipal Budget Committee or the CIP Committee recommended this. What we disagree on is the language towards the end of the article about the agents to expend. What the article says and what I would ask you to vote in favor of is the school board being agents to expend, which basically means if we want to spend money out of that fund, the school board needs to approve it. The alternative is that it would have to come to this meeting and be approved by you. In general, that's the approach that I would favor. The reason that I'm approaching it in a different direction with this particular fund, there's a few reasons. First of all, the only way that money can get put into this fund is at this meeting. So the money that's in that fund can only be put there by you, the taxpayers, anyway. It can also only be expended for the express purposes laid out in the rules of that trust fund. So it's not the situation that the school board could spend that money on anything other than vehicles. Okay. So the reason that I would rather have the school board be agents to expend is simply timing. We have one truck and we have one van. Those are the only vehicles that would be covered by this trust fund. So if our one truck were to be in an accident or otherwise incapacitated or totaled in October, we would be in a situation where we would not be able to purchase or fix that vehicle until after approval from you at the March meeting. That, to me, is a risk that we can't take. If we had a fleet of 2 or 3 trucks and 2 or 3 vans, I would completely go the other way on this. But we simply do not have backups. I don't want to put it in the budget to have a second truck so that we do have a backup. But I think it's important that we can fix or replace these vehicles when we need to. And again, the fact that the money can't go into this trust fund without your approval and can't be used on anything but these vehicles, to me, is a good enough safeguard that the money won't be used frivolously. I would say at the town meeting in March, there was a warrant article that was passed that I voted in favor of to change the agents to expend to the select board for a similar purpose. The justification was that if there are sidewalk issues and we need to expend money from that fund to fix the sidewalks, that should not have to wait until next year's March meeting to happen. To me, this is a similar thing. We're not talking about fire trucks that cost $500,000. We're not talking about, $250,000 ambulances or anything like that. It's simply our one van and our one truck, and we need to have them in service. So that's why I would ask you to vote in favor of this as it's written, so that we have the ability to make those purchases or expenditures if we need to. Thanks.
Microphone. Go ahead, microphone up front, please.
Jerry Fleury, 21 Kimball Street. I'd like to address this article, not as a member of the Budget Committee, but basically as a citizen and as a former trustee of trust funds. Those of you who know me know that I was in charge of trust funds for Pembroke for the last 28 years. I resigned that position about a month ago. In looking at what you do with capital reserve funds, which is what we're talking about here, essentially, what Andy said about, the fact that only an act of this meeting will put money into the account, that's true. That the voters have that say. However, there, I think, is where opinions divide. If you lose a truck because of an accident, that's what you have insurance for. That should be covered managerially through that mechanism. The other thing is, for every other vehicle in Pembroke, I'm talking about plow trucks, I'm talking about fire trucks, I'm talking about police cruisers. Police cruisers are in the same price range as a four-wheel drive pickup truck, which I think is one of the things that the district is looking at. You get the second bite at the apple. You get to put, as the voters, get to put the money in the account, and then you get to decide that, yeah, it's a good idea. This is a year that we should replace a vehicle. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, oh my gosh, we really need to replace the car today. That's not something that just happens. It's something that develops over time. Eventually, because of mileage, because of wear and tear, you decide that the vehicle needs to be replaced. That's called competent management. You don't suddenly get up and decide you need to replace something. We don't do it with any of the town's vehicles. And the analogy to sidewalks, really, the town finds itself, if there's an expansion to a street and that street is opened up and there needs to be sidewalks, that's why the town might not know when that happens. That's why that particular capital reserve was changed to allow the selectmen to be the agents to expend. So it's consistent with everything that's done in standard trusts and capital reserves. It's consistent with everything else that is done in Pembroke. I personally am not against the idea of having a capital reserve. I am adamantly against the idea that the school board would be the agents to expend. Let all of you make the decision when it's time to buy a new vehicle. Thank you.
Yep.
Mark Dumont, Donna Drive. The way we've been doing it, where we give, like he said, we give the voters a second bite of the apple. I think it works best because it's gonna force you guys to be proactive and not wait till the vehicle breaks down or till it's worth nothing. So that it forces you guys to do some future planning and be proactive, which is really where we want to be. So I want to encourage everyone to vote against this, and let's keep it the way we've been doing it. Let's force the school board members and the school to be proactive like we're forcing the town to be.
Tammy Boucher, Alexander Drive. I think it's disingenuous to say that it's the same as what was voted on in the town, because there aren't a million trucks or vehicles in the school district. If a fire truck breaks down, there is an alternative there. And the same with the sidewalks. I think it's the same argument. I also think we've consistently asked our school district and our school board to be transparent, which I think this is an effort to do that, to put this out there. Mr. Dumont just said that the second bite at the apple, you're having numerous bites at the apple with this. You're having a bite today. If you put money in there, you're saying I support our vehicles. There's a CIP process that's put out there. If they want to expend this money, they have to do a public hearing. So there's another bite at the apple. I think the budget committee has consistently asked the school board to put items into funds to plan ahead. I think that's what they're doing in this instance. I believe that this is not inconsistent with all funds, that the school board is the agent to expend on some funds. So I don't think this is fair. I think that you're asking for minimal dollars. These are small vehicles, like we said, not multi-million-dollar fire trucks. I think this is an effort to be transparent. I think this is an effort for people to have a say here and in other venues, and I would strongly encourage support of this warrant article.
Oh, right there.
John Harrington, Pembroke Hill Road. So I've got a buddy who has a truck and his transmission blew. So what happens then? And we got 5 cruisers. Can somebody say what they use the trucks for, and so that we have a better idea of what happens if one goes down?
I'm going to speak in general terms so that I don't have to make Mr. Coughlin come up, but I mean, everything you could think of to use a truck for that a school district would do. Correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, they don't plow with them, but this is moving equipment from one building to another. When COVID happened, all of the deliveries for plexiglass and desks and all that stuff come to one central location here at PA, I believe, and then it gets inventoried and all that, and then it has to go out to all of our other buildings. The truck is used for that. If a lawnmower needs to be moved from one school to another, it'll be, very typical what you would expect a truck to be used for. And van similarly for transporting things back and forth between buildings. I know, when we closed Village School, obviously that building had to be emptied and they were making runs day after day after day to clean that out. So, nothing to the point of plowing, but just typical what you would expect a pickup truck and a van to be used for, in a town our size.
Rosemary Michaud, 340 Beacon Hill Road. I'm opposed to this article because I think that we should be voting when money is put in or taken out. Whether it's 20,000 or 1.1 million, it doesn't matter. It's important. Because the next article after this is asking us if we want to spend money on a vehicle. So if you vote yes on this, that takes away your ability to vote on something like that, number 7 in the future. Am I correct?
No, so what the next article after this, and I don't want to go too far into it because we're not on that one, but this would be to establish the trust fund. What we're doing right now would be establish this trust fund and put a little bit of money in it so that it exists. The next article after this would be to put more money in it, but not immediately. We've done this, for years and years. The way it would work is at the end of the next school year, so June 30th of 2022, if we have a surplus, which we've talked about already, then I forget what it even says, $30,000 from that surplus money would then be put in that trust fund, again, to plan ahead for future vehicles. And those types of articles would still come to this meeting. We would not be able to put money into that trust fund without an article just like that every time we wanted to.
Okay, so wait a minute. No, that's a little confusing to me because I understand this is asking to raise and appropriate money to be placed in the fund, but then you have at the end the Pembroke School Board as agents to expend from this fund. So that is, to me, changing the whole wording of the fund. And I'd like clarification if Mr. Flurry could speak on that. So if he could answer that, if that's
Sure,
okay, Mr. Moderator.
Yeah, I can try, and then if you have any additions, sorry? Sure, go ahead. Just explain agents to expend.
The articles as they're
Take
written,
your mask down, Jerry. Thanks.
sorry, the articles as they're written put money into a newly established fund, and then the subsequent article adds to what the first article created. And the whole key to this agent to expend thing, you're not giving permission to the school board to buy a truck this year. You're giving permission to the school board to buy vehicles indefinitely, whenever they decide they want to. I don't believe that's consistent with why vehicle capital reserves are created. and it's not what I would advise for Pembroke.
Thank you. I'm against Article number 6 because I do not think that the voters should have their rights taken away from them in the future. I think we should be able to vote on what is expended from the fund. So I vote no on this.
James Gammon, Pleasant Street. I agree with her statement from the point of view that establishing a fund to at least, understand that eventually one or both of these vehicles may be need to be replaced is a sound practice to put money aside on a yearly basis. Removing the ability to say yay or nay to a capital purchase or choice, that resides with the town. Giving it over to the body, the school body, I don't believe is the proper venue for the going. Coming up with an idea for replacement of the vehicles, by all means, let's put it together, let's do an analysis, figure out what's wrong with the vehicles, either get it fixed or put a fund together to get them replaced. But we should be doing it on a yearly basis with a stipend that goes in every year. So it accumulates, and then we're not getting a big hit all at once, like a $40,000 hit, maybe $5,000 every year, something like that. Do something sound and with good practice. So that's my idea. So I'd have to vote no for this. I mean, I can say yes to the fund, but I wouldn't say yes to the ability for pulling the trigger. Thank you.
April Villani, Pembroke Hill Road. I'm a member of the school board. I voted in favor of this. After I voted in favor, I did learn of Mr. Fleury's dissension and the reason why. It makes sense to me. One question that hasn't been answered for me, and that I'm hoping can be answered here today, is should warrant Article 6 be approved with this school board as agents to expend? What recourse do the registered voters of Pembroke have to change in the future the agents to expend on a fund? Thank you.
Once again, a caveat, I am no longer a trustee of trust funds, but in my history of that, it is possible to change a fund to amend who the agents to expend are. It has to be done either at a town meeting or a school district meeting, and it also requires a supermajority vote. So it's not a simple majority to make that change. Just that can be changed at some subsequent meeting. I believe that was your question.
Thank you. Follow up. I'm just wondering if we can get an answer on what the supermajority would be, a definition of that number of voters. Thank you.
Yeah, supermajority is 2/3.
Yeah, I'm just looking to our council to see if he can provide any further details.
Lisa Sprint, Pembroke Street. Okay, so I understand buying vehicles, but if the vehicle breaks down, where does that money come from? Does that have to come from this fund? So it has to be voted on, so if it breaks down in September? Or, I mean, even like with the town, if the cruiser breaks down, where does that money come to get it fixed? I'm confused on that.
It comes from the same place it's come from, and for the 20 or 30 years that the district has owned a pickup truck, comes out of the operating budget. And if something catastrophic happens, they want $4,000 for a rebuild transmission or something like that, and you need a vehicle, it's called a rent-a-truck.
Good afternoon, Richard Bean. I live at 243 Alexander Drive in Pembroke. Just one quick question. How many miles are on the truck, Andy?
There's roughly 50,000. And it's a 2012.
The only other thing I'd comment on when folks ask for mileage, just please be aware that idle time matters to vehicles. Again, I'm trying not to opine, but we have lots of vehicles in town that spend an awful lot of time idling that don't necessarily accumulate miles, that do accumulate wear and tear.
I'm sorry, my name is Julia Miller. I live on Brickett Hill Road, and I'm new to town, so I just don't understand. Why do we need a trust when we have had an equipment installation and labor trust fund? Why do we need a different one?
I honestly would defer to Jerry. I think he was chair of CIP again. But honestly, I believe it was CIP committee that recommended it. I think it's because it sort of models after the town. The town has a specific fund for vehicles. I think it's another, attempt at transparency. This is what this money is being set aside for. But Jerry, if you've got anything to chip in, absolutely.
Yeah, the whole concept of using capital reserves, and it was a recommendation of capital improvement. That's a committee that I happen to chair. Anytime that you have anything that can cause a vacillation in the tax rate up or down, you're going to buy something that's conceivably a big ticket. And you kind of assume that the tax rate over time is going to creep upward, but you don't want it to jump upward and downward. You want it smoothed out. So that's what you do with a capital reserve. You budget money and you put it into that capital reserve to accumulate an amount of money that would be necessary to meet a particular financial objective. Pembroke has many capital reserves, both on the town and the school side, for that purpose. And then they fall into a couple of different categories. We don't have a capital reserve for vehicles for the school district. We have a number of them for the town, but not for the school district. So CIP's recommendation to the school board was that they establish one, set it up, start putting money into it. Where the disagreement began to emerge was on who would be the agent to expend. There are other capital reserves that make a lot of sense in the school district where the school board is the agent to expend. The textbook case for that is special education. Tomorrow, a student could move into Pembroke and the education cost for that special ed student could be 10 times the normal. Then the school board holds a public hearing at one of their meetings, decides that they're going to reserve or withdraw money from their special ed capital reserve. That's the proper use of something where the local body is the agent to expend. So there's a surprise. You didn't know about that student until today. That doesn't generally happen with vehicles.
Dean, are you? Just going to ask Dean Egger to come back up front and explain the previous question. You'll be next.
So Mr. Fleury is correct that it would take a 2/3 vote to change the purpose of a capital reserve fund. It would take a simple majority vote, though, to designate the Board of Selectmen or the school board as agents to expend to an existing reserve. So for example, if an article passes that establishes a capital reserve and there's no agent designated, if you then advanced in a subsequent year a designation of an agent, that would be a simple majority vote. But if you change the purpose of the reserve, it would take a supermajority of 2/3. Mr. Fleury is correct.
Armin Susi, 403 Buck Street. My question is, if we combine these two, we vote on 6 and obviously we pass it, we now vote on 7. Are we voting on $20,000 and then on 7, another $32,000? Or are we talking $52,500? Or are we talking, the way it's worded, it says we're basing up to the $32,000. That would be adding 12 or 1250, or 12.5.
Yeah, so if Article 6 were to pass, fund would be established. And $20,000 would go into this budget that we're talking about and be put in that fund on July 1. The other 32.5 is in addition, but it says up to because it's from surplus. So if we got to the end of next year, again, July or June 30th of 2022, and let's say there were only $17,000 surplus, then $17,000 would get put in there. But it caps out at 32.5. So if we had a large surplus like we do this year, then the full 32.5 would go into that trust fund for a total of 52.5.
This motion moved the question. Is Jerry Fleury, is there a second? Armin, second. All in favor, please hold up your voter card. All opposed? Motion carries. So warrant Article 6, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to establish a vehicle expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 198:20 lowercase c for the purpose of purchasing, replacing, or repairing school district vehicles, to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in this fund, and further to appoint the Pembroke School Board as agents to expend from this fund. School Board recommends approval. Budget Committee does not recommend approval. All in favor, please hold up your voter card. All opposed? Yeah, we're gonna have to, that's a little too close for me to call. So we're gonna have to do a division of the House. So if I can get a couple of volunteers. So you see this? So Mark's going to drive the lane. Again, if everyone in favor can please hold up your voter card to be counted, please. Unfortunately, I do need you to keep them up until Jerry's complete and Mark are complete. Everyone's all set. Thank you. Now, if we can do the same thing for everyone who's opposed to warrant 6, please hold up your voter card. I believe we're all set. Thank you. "46 yes, 31 no. The motion carries. Now we'll move on to warrant Article 7 to see if the Pembroke School District will contingent upon passage of Article 6, vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $32,500 to be added to the Vehicle Expendable Trust Fund previously established. This sum to come from the June 30 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. No amount to be raised from taxation. School Board recommends approval. Budget Committee does not recommend approval. Pleasure of the meeting. Second? Questions?
Rosemary Michaud, 340 Beacon Hill Road. I just want to make sure I got the information right. Was it, how much mileage is on there and what year is it?
I'll ask Josh to answer.
2012 with 50,000.
And as far as maintenance costs this year, issues with the truck? I mean, because just because it's older doesn't mean needs to be replaced.
There has been some maintenance. I do not have those figures.
Sure.
Have they just been regular maintenance or like transmission? Or, I mean, is it just small maintenance? Makes a difference.
So again, I don't have that exact answer, but there has been stuff more than just tires and oil changes.
If I could comment, just because you mentioned replacement, I just want to be clear that we're not asking to replace a truck here. This is just putting money into the trust fund so that eventually when we do have to replace that truck or make big fixes on that truck, the money is already there and it doesn't have to hit the operating budget and fluctuate the tax rate as Mr. Fleury described. So we're not asking to replace the truck this year. We're asking to put money in a fund so that if we have to replace a truck at some point, we have the ability to do so.
Well, I know I'm on the CIP committee and I can remember that was one of the things listed that wanted to be replaced. So.
Yep, it is on the list.
It wasn't like 5 years down or 10, I didn't have to, I wish I had my papers with me, but.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I don't want to have anybody under the assumption that I'm saying we definitely won't replace the truck this year. We rely on Mr. Coughlin to tell us when it's the right time to do that and we look into it. So I'm just saying that this article is not to replace a truck. It's just to put money in the fund so that when the truck needs to be replaced, we have some funds to do that. That's it.
Okay, what is the fund balance before this article? And since number 6 has been added?
Yeah, so this is the fund that we just created 5 minutes ago. So the only balance in it is going to be the $20,000 that we put in.
There's nothing, okay.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess it's a misunderstanding. So at CIP, it sounded like it was going to be replaced.
And it could be, I honestly don't, off the top of my head, I don't know if Mr. Coughlin would say we're looking within a calendar year or not. I don't know if he's comfortable talking to that. I don't know either way. I just wanted to be clear that that's not what this article is for. We're not saying we're replacing a truck this year. This is just to put 32.5 from whatever we have left over at the end of next year into this fund.
And, okay, and could the maintenance director speak on this as far as when he presented to the CIP, as far as when the truck was going to be replaced?
So the biggest concern with the truck right now is it is rusting and we are losing it on that end, body wise. We have 50,000 miles, as somebody spoke. We believe those idling miles are just as bad as if it had 250,000 highway miles. And yes, if approved, I would go to the school board this next fiscal year for replacement.
Oh, actually, if we can.
Dan Crane, Eastview Drive. Just one question, and that's what is the estimated cost of the truck to replace it?
So we have on our CIP plan a figure of $35,000 for the pickup truck.
Mark Dumont, Donna Drive. Just so I fully understand, this is almost backtracking, but we just created a trust fund to purchase, replace, or repair. So this could lead to multiple vehicles for school, right? So I just wanted to throw that in there when we're considering whether we're gonna throw more than the $20,000 into this fund. This is if I'm correct, this is the monster we just created.
Hi, Susan Bird, Pembroke Street. I should have asked this earlier, I meant to. Can you point out, please, on the MS 27, what appropriation line the vehicles are funded through?
Do you mean previously, before we just established this trust fund to take care of that?
No, I'm asking, how are these, the truck and the van, how are they, where is it in here where they're paid for already?
This is the
Okay.
light MS line.
I heard maintenance, but is it plant operations and maintenance?
Oh, so for purchase and repair? Okay, so prior to this, if we had a repair to do, if it was, as long as a relatively small repair, that would come out of our general operating budget. If it was a larger purchase or a larger repair rather, or a purchase, it actually came out of a different trust fund. I believe it was the equipment trust fund. And that's part of what we're trying to do here is separate out the truck and the van from our other stuff like tractors and zero turn mowers and things like that.
So I should look for trust fund and that's where the repairs budget would be on that? On these?
So.
She's asking my MS line for dollars.
I think
So would this need?
Mark, sure. Well, what was that number? Okay, sorry. I hope this answers your question. So you can see this 32.5 and where it would go on the MS form on page 5 on line 5252.
Thank you. I guess that was, another part of this question is, would this, money be better put into that fund, instead of into the trust fund? 32 plus, 20, that's over 50. So that would buy a new vehicle if there would need to be one purchased, perhaps.
Yeah, so there would be more vehicles covered with this new fund, or, well, one more. It currently is one truck and one van. So again, if we did buy, as Mr. Coughlin said, we may buy a new vehicle in the coming year. If that happened, obviously this fund would be greatly reduced. And then we would start, the idea would be to put surplus money in it each year, a little bit at a time, so that when the van is up next, the fund is up to the point where we can pay for that. And it would kind of just be a rolling cycle.
I think it's worth a moment to explain Trust Operations 101 here. That 32,500, that money isn't going to show up until about next December because the school district is funding it from surplus. They have to finish the current fiscal year. And once DRA sets the tax rate and they know exactly what's going to go to surplus and what's going to go to capital reserves, only at that point does that 32.5 get transferred and added into the 20,000 that's appropriated by the previous warrant article? So you're not buying anything with that money until it actually gets into the capital reserve. And right now, page 74 of your town report, there's a listing of the balance sheet for all of the school district's trusts. There is no line in there for vehicles because that didn't exist at the end of last year. It will be in next year's town report. So you're putting 20,000 in right away from your last warrant article, and then when the surplus is determined, that's when you'd put in the 32.5.
Any,
Me again, Rosemary Michelle, 340 Beacon Hill Road. Okay, I don't know, this is like an information question. Is it too late to ask to reconsider number 6? Warrant article number 6? I know we're in number 7, but I'm gonna ask you.
I would ask that we complete warrant article number 7, and then you're welcome to make whatever motion you want to make after that. Okay, but we're in warrant article number 7 now. So let's complete warrant article number 7.
And this is the discussion on number 7, we wouldn't be able to have because in the years to come, because of number 6. So keep that in mind.
Actually, I do need to correct that just for everyone's understanding. Any deposits into capital reserve funds are warrant articles that are voted upon at this meeting, longstanding practice in Pembroke. So any further deposits from capital reserve funds will be voted upon in this meeting, a separate warrant article. From surplus.
What I'm saying, I understand you have to be able to vote to put money in, but in the future, we wouldn't have a say in whether we want money taken out. Is that correct?
Not at this meeting, you wouldn't have a say, but again, statutorily, they are required to have a public hearing, and you certainly would have a say at the public hearing. They cannot spend money out of a capital reserve fund without it going through the trustee of trust funds and holding a public hearing. So not at this meeting, but at other meetings, you would have a voice.
I'm sorry, you lost me. So next year, we wouldn't have this type of article to raise and appropriate the sum of whatever to take for a vehicle, because the school board has been voted agents to expend from this fund in the previous article. So we wouldn't see this article.
Again, I'm sorry, and I'll try to say it a little bit differently. Again, this article, to see if the Pembroke School District will, contingent upon passage of Article 6, which it did, vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $32,500 to be added to the Vehicle Expendable Trust Fund previously established. This sum to come from the June 30th unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. So I would expect a similar warrant article to come before this meeting every single time the school board wants to make a deposit into this trust fund from surplus. Folks understand that? It's a longstanding practice of the school board whenever they want to use any surplus dollars to make deposits into capital reserve funds, that those are separate warrant articles that are voted upon in this meeting on an annual basis. We typically have monies going into special ed capital reserve fund, building capital reserve fund, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have the rest of those articles this year, but we do have this one. So this is what I would expect to come forward as much as the school board wants to bring forward in the future.
Okay, so that's surplus. But, okay, let's say next year you have
Okay.
some odd $1,000 in there, and they want to get a truck, does that come before the people at the school budget vote normally held in March or not?
Again, it does not. It would, the request would have to go through the trust funds, and they would have to hold a public hearing, which you're welcome to attend. Go right here.
Amy Manzelli, 418 Ross Road. Motion to call the question, please.
Is there a second? You make Andy. All in favor of calling the question? All opposed? Motion carries. So, warrant Article 7, to see if the Pembroke School District will, contingent upon the passage of Article 6, vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $32,500 to be added to the Vehicle Expendable Trust Fund previously established. This sum to come from the June 30 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021, no amount to be raised from taxation. School Board recommends approval. Budget Committee does not recommend approval. All in favor, please hold up your voter cards. All opposed? Let's do that one more time. All in favor? All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 8, to choose agents, committees in relation to any subjects embraced in the warrant. Anything to come before the meeting? Any other business that needs to be transacted before this meeting? Before I call for a motion to adjourn, I would just mention that,
I don't know if I'm going to word it correctly. Rosemary Michaud, 340 Beacon Hill Road. I would like to make a motion to reconsider Article number 6.
is there a second? Second, can we get that written out, please?
Pardon me?
We just need to. Yep. That's 6, right? 6.
Paul Hanson seconded.
Article number 6 again. Okay. So again, the motion is for reconsideration. And I wanted to make sure to clarify, a yay vote on motion for reconsideration just means that we consider Article number 6 again and revote on Article number 6. A no vote means we do not reconsider Article number 6, no vote again. So we're not voting on Article number 6. We're voting on the motion to reconsider. Any questions? All those in favor, please hold up your voter card. All opposed? The motion is defeated. Any other? Oh, all set? All right, if there's no other business, I did want to make a call out for volunteers for the school in town. I do believe we have a member of the budget committee retiring. So if anyone is interested in serving, I'm not sure what the exact makeup will be next year. Please feel free to see me after the meeting. And with that being said, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor? Thank you all very much. Hope you have a nice day.